Good afternoon. My name is Dan Scripps, Chair of the Michigan Public Service Commission. I call this meeting of the Commission to order on August 27, 2026 at 1:00 p.m. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chair Scripps,
Present.
Commissioner Pericek,
Present.
Commissioner Myers.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Today's meeting is being held in person here at the Commission's office at 7109 West Saginaw Highway in Lansing, Michigan. We're also hosting this meeting remotely using Microsoft Teams. Telephone relay service is available through the phone option. If you are participating via Microsoft Teams, you may also turn on the live captions by clicking on the More button at the top right of your Teams window, then clicking on Language and Speech from the drop-down menu, and finally clicking on Turn on Live Captions. As indicated in the notice for today's meeting, if we lose the remote connection, the Commission will not recess. The meeting will, however, be recorded and available for future reference on the Commission's website. In addition, the Commissioners can receive comments via lara-mpsc-commissioners@michigan.gov. And for reference, this email is also included in today's meeting notice. However, for public comments pertaining to a specific case, please submit your comments to lara-mpsc-edockets@michigan.gov. And please note the case number if you have that. We will have an opportunity, of course, for the public to make comments as provided in the agenda. A few notes about this. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and one per person. If you would like to make verbal comments, you must do so in person or remotely through Microsoft Teams or by calling into the meeting by phone. For individuals attending in person and who want to make a verbal comment, please fill out a comment card. They're available at the back table or at the table near the rear door there. For individuals participating remotely by Microsoft Teams and who want to make a verbal comment, you may click on the raise hand button at any time to be queued up for comment. And for individuals participating remotely by phone and who want to make a verbal comment, you may press *5 at any time to be queued up for comment. Note that public commenters on both Microsoft Teams and on the phone are added to the same speaker queue and will be called upon in the order that they enter the speaker queue. And so please do not lower your hand or press *5 again, or you'll be removed from the queue and lose your place in line. Please note that the Commission will not tolerate verbal abuse or threats of any kind. If such behavior is observed, the offending party will be asked to leave and escorted out of the building. And finally, to minimize disruptions, attendees participating by Microsoft Teams or by phone will be muted until we reach the time for public comment. The first order of business is approval of the agenda for today's meeting.
I move for the approval of the agenda for today's commission meeting.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve today's agenda. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote and the agenda is approved. The next item of business on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our August 6, 2026 commission meeting.
I move for the approval of the minutes from the August 6, 2026 commission meeting.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the minutes from the August 6, 2026 commission meeting. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote and the commission meeting minutes of August 6, 2026 are approved. The next item of business on the agenda is the approval of the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda. And today the commission is assisted by Staff Attorney Shannon Wambaugh. I recognize Ms. Wambaugh.
Good afternoon, Chair. Today's consent agenda consists of 5 communications matters, 4 electric matters, and 3 gas matters. The proposed orders and minute actions for these matters have been thoroughly vetted by the Commission's technical and legal staff and are ready for your approval.
Thank you, Ms. Wamba. I move for the approval of the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote and the orders and minute actions on the consent agenda are approved. I recognize Ms. Wambaugh.
Thank you. Item 4A1 is case number U-20852, which involves a matter on the Commission's own motion to commence a collaborative to consider best practices to ensure cost-effective development of new energy resources and to limit procurement barriers for emerging technologies, including processes for competitive bidding. The order before you invites interested persons to submit initial and reply comments in this docket regarding the revised draft competitive procurement guidelines.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20852.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to highlight the opportunity for any interested person to comment on the staff's proposed updates to the competitive procurement guidelines as outlined in this order. We last updated our competitive bidding guidelines in 2021, which were meant to encourage fair, transparent, and non-discriminatory processes for utilities to use when seeking competitive bids for new energy resources. The updates proposed in the guidelines submitted by staff make these guidelines even stronger. Affordability is front of mind for the Commission, and increasing competition via competitive procurement is one way that we're taking action to help keep costs down for electric customers.
Thank you, Commissioner Peretick. Is there any additional discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20852 is approved. I recognize Ms. Wambaugh.
Item 4A2 is case number U-20889, which involves an application filed by Consumers Energy Company for a financing order approving the securitization of qualified costs. The order before you approves the routine true-up of the securitization charges.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-20889.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-20889 is approved. I recognize Ms. Wambaugh.
Item 4A3 is case number U-21285, which involves an application filed by DTE Electric Company for ex parte approval of the company's Northwood Solar Park project. The order before you approves the application.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21285.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote, and the order in case number U-21285 is approved. I recognize Ms. Wambaugh.
Item 4A4 is case number U-21932, which involves an application filed by Acceleration Solar LLC to develop a solar energy facility in Ingham County, Michigan. The order before you approves a settlement agreement entered into by the parties that resolves all issues in the case and further authorizes Acceleration Solar LLC to construct a 90 megawatt solar energy facility pursuant to Public Act 233 of 2023.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21932.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah. All right. Good afternoon. U-21932 is the first solar siting case under PA 233 of 2023 that has been filed with the commission and gone through the case process. This first case is also a tangible opportunity to see the legislation that I worked on while in the House move from paper into practice. While developing the legislation, we knew that creating a statutory framework was only the beginning. The real test would be whether the process could work in an actual community with an actual project and with real concerns from people and local governments affected by the project. I hope we continue to learn as we go through the process of other cases. Each preceding case will present different circumstances and different community concerns, but the underlying principles should remain the same: transparency, consistency, meaningful participation, and a complete evidentiary record and accountability after a project is approved. The legislature gave the commission the responsibility to develop a siting process for certain utility scale renewable energy projects under specified circumstances. Before any individual project came before us, the commission engaged in a substantial implementation process to develop procedures designed to provide clarity and transparency for future applications. When the Acceleration Solar application was submitted, staff reviewed the filings to ensure the application contained the necessary information based on the guidelines developed. This was a contested case proceeding where discovery requests were made and testimony and exhibits were filed. The contested case process provided the parties with an opportunity to examine the application, request additional information, present evidence, and raise issues that they believe were relevant to the commission's consideration of the project. This provides the commission with a complete record for which decisions can be made. A settlement agreement was reached between the parties of the case, which included Acceleration Solar, MPSC staff, Leslie Township, Onondaga Township, and Vevay Township in Ingham County. The settlement established requirements for construction, noise control, screening, lighting, complaint resolution, decommissioning, financial assistance, and community benefits. The case doesn't end here. The commission will receive reporting from the applicants throughout the project's life. This provides a mechanism for the commission to monitor the construction phase, the project's energy performance at the completion of constructions, complaints received, maintenance, and financial assurance. As this was the first citing case, it provides an important foundation moving forward. Thank you to all those who participated in this process, because again, it was our first one, and I hope we continue to learn from this.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. Is there any additional discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Commissioner Myers very well noted, this is the first citing case under PA 233 that has come before the commission, and it has resulted in a settlement agreement between all parties involved. There's been a lot of discussion about the new citing process established by PA 233, which gave the commission, authority over renewable energy citing in some circumstances, and what that means for the respective roles of the state, local governments, developers, and communities. But I think this case is a useful example of what this process can look like. The 3 townships that will host the proposed project, Leslie, Onondaga, and Vevay, participated directly in this proceeding along with our staff and the developer. There was testimony filed, there was a detailed review of the project, and ultimately those parties were able to sit down together and reach an agreement that resolves all of the issues in the case. And importantly, the settlement contains real enforceable protections and commitments for the host communities. There are detailed requirements around noise, including monitoring, modeling, and post-construction testing. There are requirements for dark sky lighting, vegetative screening, pollinator-friendly ground cover, habitat protection, complaint tracking and resolution, and first responder training. There are also community benefit payments and additional commitments related to legal expenses, drain maintenance, and public safety. And there are decommissioning requirements, which has understandably been an important concern for communities considering large renewable projects. Communities want to know that defunct infrastructure won't be left in the ground and become a blight in their neighborhoods. This settlement ensures that the developer, not the township and not the local taxpayers, will be responsible for the cost of decommissioning this facility when that time comes, and the developer has to prove upfront that it has the financial means to do so before construction ever begins. And at the end of the project's life, the settlement requires removal of the underground infrastructure and restoration of the land to productive agricultural use. I also think it's important that our involvement does not end when we issue this certificate. As Commissioner Myers mentioned, the developer is required to comply with reporting requirements, both during construction and after operation begins. Reporting will cover energy production, complaints, maintenance, and financial assurance. The commission and the townships will therefore continue to have visibility into this project throughout its life. This is our first solar siting case under the new law, so I think it's particularly important that we establish from the beginning that this process can provide a workable path for projects that meet the requirements established by the legislature without sacrificing rigorous review, transparency, and a focus on local concerns. I want to thank our staff for the substantial amount of work that has gone into standing up an entirely new citing process and into reviewing this first application, especially Sarah Malkoff and her whole team, Gus Cordero, Austin Glass, Melissa Lawson, Joseph Lobojinsky, Katie Miracle, Elizabeth Sinclair, and Candace McElhaney. And I also want to thank the representatives of Leslie, Onondaga, and Vevay townships for engaging in this proceeding, as well as all of the parties for doing the work necessary to reach a resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Peretick. We had a saying in the legislature that everything's been said, but not everybody's said it. And I think this fits that as well. I echo my colleagues' points, and maybe just to reinforce those and offer a couple additional observations. The first, picking up on what both Commissioner Myers and Commissioner Peretick said, the settlement agreement before us today is the result of a thorough review. And just to underscore that, we have 12 applications pending under the 2023 law. And of those, the staff has actually issued letters of incompleteness in 5 of them. So nearly half ultimately were found to be incomplete at the time of submittal. We're intentionally setting a high bar. We want complete, full applications, and it's important for developers to dot the I's and cross the T's, as this helps facilitate a level of engagement with affected communities and ensures robust review through the contested case process. Those 12 applications, by the way, represent a total of 2.1 gigawatts of projects, including nearly 1,900 megawatts of solar, 300 megawatts of wind, and 150 megawatts of battery energy storage. The second point that I'd highlight, and that, by the way, that process, again, I want to echo the thanks to Sarah Molkoff and her team, including those from other sections across the commission who have pitched in to help. This is truly the work of many hands. The second point that has already been flagged is that this is a settlement agreement. It represents agreement among all the parties. And I think particularly in cases like this, that is a good thing. The settlement agreement was fiercely negotiated by the parties to the case, including local leaders in Leslie Onondaga and Vevay townships, who were able to achieve through the settlement agreement meaningful and binding commitments, including hundreds of thousands of dollars in direct payments, as well as township legal expenses, drain maintenance, and training for local fire personnel and first responders, as Commissioner Pericek mentioned. Those are real benefits to the communities who ultimately will host this project. And I also want to thank the community leaders in Ingham County who ultimately chose not to participate, though were extended the opportunity to do so after the Court of Appeals decision earlier this year. But as a result of their engagement with project developers, we'll still see meaningful local community benefits, including direct payments, as a result of a separate agreement that they entered into with the project developer. This is, in my view, an example of getting this right. It is a law that is working as intended, changing the conversation around development, providing meaningful opportunities for project development, but also meaningful opportunities for local engagement in the process. And I'm pleased to support the settlement agreement that's in front of us today. And with that, we'll now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote, and the order in case number U-21932 is approved. I recognize Ms. Wamba.
Thank you. Item 4A5 is case number U-21986, which involves an application filed by Indiana Michigan Power Company for approval of certain amendments to its large power tariff, Tariff LP. The order before you approves amendments to the Tariff LP, adopts annual reporting requirements, and provides guidance for a future rate case and related requirements as described in the order.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21986.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We've spent a lot of time at this commission over the past year thinking about large loads and the effect that they would have on our electric system and on other electric customers. This order is another important step towards making sure that if and when this new load comes to Michigan, we have a framework in place that allows us to capture the potential benefits while protecting the customers who are already here. Even a single large customer can materially change the size and characteristics of this system, which is why it's particularly important that this order is focused so clearly on protecting existing customers from cost shifting and stranded asset risk. There are several provisions here that I think are worth highlighting. First, we require I&M to establish and present a separate standalone rate for large load customers in its next rate case. These customers can be fundamentally different in scale and in risk from the customers currently served under the existing industrial tariff, and therefore they should have a different allocation of cost that appropriately matches their costs to the system. Relatedly, we require I&M to present 6 different cost allocation and rate design analyses in its next rate case, including scenarios that directly assign generation, transmission, and distribution costs to large load customers. That will give the Commission and interested parties a better factual basis for understanding who is actually causing costs and who would pay them under different approaches. Second, this order puts meaningful protections in place before a customer ever takes service. It includes a 15-year initial contract term following the ramp-up period, substantial collateral requirements, high exit fees, and limitations on capacity reductions. These provisions matter because an investment made by the utility to serve these customers could be substantial and long-lived, and we need to ensure that the customer causing the investment is the one who is paying for it. And importantly, before each large load customer takes service, I&M will have to make a filing with this commission demonstrating both compliance with the tariff and that the costs caused by that customer are not being paid by other customers. Individual customer review is important when contemplating loads at this scale. we are dealing with loads of a size and character that are still relatively novel. We cannot simply anticipate every circumstance today. Having an additional checkpoint gives us the ability to look at the actual customer, the actual infrastructure required to serve it, and the actual cost impacts before approval. I also want to highlight the reliability protections in this order because at this scale, large loads can become a grid reliability issue as well. The order before us requires I&M to update its technical interconnection requirements, including requirements intended to address the behavior of these loads on the system. And finally, I want to highlight that this order requires ongoing reporting once I&M enters into a large load contract, including the amount of load on the system, capacity changes, contract terminations, and exit fees. The scale and speed of potential data center growth mean that we need to get these protections in place before the load arrives, not after we discover a problem. The order before us gives I&M a pathway to serve large new customers while establishing meaningful financial protections, transparency, commission oversight, and a process to develop a more appropriate long-term rate structure as we gain actual experience with these loads. I appreciate the extensive work of staff, the ALJ, the parties to the case, and everyone involved in developing this record. We're continuing our strict customer protections around large loads to maintain our standing as having some of the strongest protections for existing customers in the country.
Thank you, Commissioner Peretick. Is there any additional discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21986 is approved. I recognize Ms. Wamba.
Item 4A6 is case number U-22059, which involves an application filed by DTE Electric Company for ex parte approval of updates to the company's emergency electrical procedure in section C3 of the company's rate book for electrical service. The order approves the application as modified by this order.
I move for the approval of the order in case number U-22059.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-22059 is approved. I recognize Ms. Wamba.
Item 4B1 is case number U-21938, which involves a complaint filed by Jordan Development Company, LLC, Newzile Oil Corporation, and New Energy, LLC, against Phillips 66 Company and DCP Michigan Pipeline and Processing, LLC. The order before you remands the matter to the Administrative Law Judge Division to set a schedule for the case to proceed as a contested case in accordance with the Michigan Administrative Procedures Act of 1969, and for the previously filed petitions to intervene to also be reconsidered as a result.
Thank you, Ms. Wamba. I move for the approval of the order in case number U-21938.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? We will now have a vote on the motion to approve the order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The order in case number U-21938 is approved. We've now reached the time reserved for members of the public to address the commission. As mentioned in the notice for today's meeting, we will take public comments in the following order. First, from individuals attending in person, and then from individuals participating remotely, either through Microsoft Teams or the phone, who have entered the speaker queue. As a reminder, this public comment period is for commissioners to listen to comments and concerns and not to answer specific questions. When providing comment, please indicate your name and where you live if you're willing to share so that we have it for our records. And again, please limit comments to one per person and keep them brief, no longer than 3 minutes, so we have a chance to hear from all who would like to comment. We do have a couple of cards that from individuals attending in person, as well as some hands up through the virtual options. And so I'll start with George Hartwell. Mr. Mayor, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Chairman Scripps and Commissioners. My name is George Hartwell. I'm the retired mayor of Grand Rapids, and in retirement, I live on the Muskegon River downstream from the Consumers Energy Croton Dam. I was on the Muskegon on Monday. The smallmouth bass fishing is spectacular this year. But the Muskegon is also a remarkable year-round multi-species fishery, a cool water system. As a fisherman and a river keeper, I wish the Muskegon was undammed. But those 3 dams have been there since long before I was born, and I suspect that they're going to be there well after I'm gone. Consumers Energy has been a responsible owner of these 3 dams on the Muskegon, and I'm sure the other 10 dams that they own on the other Michigan rivers. That's not to say they've been perfect. For decades, Croton Dam has been out of compliance with Michigan's water quality standards, just like 5 other Consumers Energy hydro dams. Thermal pollution and low dissolved oxygen levels are fine for tubers, but they're deadly for trout. And I know that FERC has required consumers to put in a new spillway on at the Hardy Dam, and so far Consumers has ducked that responsibility. And I watched with alarm this spring during the floods as urgent messages came out of the Mecosta County Emergency Services Office warning people away from Croton Dam, while Consumers workers worked through the stormy night to shore up damage to that structure as the water was rising. So if even publicly regulated Consumers Energy has been an imperfect owner, I fear what would happen if this sale to an investor-owned, out-of-state private equity company goes through. Will my Muskegon River be safe under an unregulated, profit-driven company with no ties to Michigan? Hull Street Energy has created a shell corporation, Confluence Power, and Confluence has in turn created 13 additional shell corporations, one to own each dam. Why would you do that unless you knew that you could be safe bankrupting one or more of those shells and letting Michigan taxpayers pick up the tab when that dam fails? If this transfer of ownership were to another public utility, commissioners, I would not be here before you today. But I've come today because I fear for these rivers, for the people who live on the rivers, and all the life that these rivers support if ownership transfers to a profit-driven Maryland company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Hartwell. John Bebo. Oh, sorry. And then James Ward is up next. Mr. Bebo, nice to see you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is John Bebo. I am a retiree who spent my career in Michigan journalism and public policy. I maintain a part-time residence in the AuSable River corridor, and I too am here to address the proposed sale of the Consumers Energy dams across Michigan. I participated in some of the Consumers Energy community meetings in the small community of Glenny, Michigan, near the AuSable River. So I have heard and I am empathetic to the fears of some residents in Riverside communities that if this sale is not approved, the dams may not be maintained, and ultimately they may lose those reservoirs, or what many of us call dam ponds, that rest behind the dams. However, the Public Service Commission is simply not in the business of protecting dam ponds. It's not in your mission. Your mission is to govern the provision of safe, affordable, and equitable power for ratepayers. Any ruling you would make on the rationale protecting dam ponds would contradict that mission. Statewide ratepayers have paid many millions of dollars to subsidize the marginal recreational and economic value of dam ponds. For example, a couple of years ago, Consumers Energy projected spending $132 million to operate and maintain just the AuSable River dams over the next 5 years. In return, the dams were projected to produce only $15 million in electricity. Therefore, the net cost of maintaining just the AuSable River dam ponds is more than $20 million a year. Local communities near the dams don't pay those costs. Statewide electricity customers pay those costs. It's not equitable. It goes against the Public Service Commission's mission. Why should households and businesses in, say, Jackson, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, or Flint pay millions of dollars to support dam ponds of marginal recreational value in very lightly populated places, no disrespect intended? like Glenny and Mile. Likewise, the proposed dam sale would irresponsibly require statewide ratepayers to pay billions of dollars over market rate for woefully inefficient hydropower and private profit without ever addressing the costs and realities of the ultimate fate of these increasingly expensive and unsafe dams. The dams are a clear economic loser. They are decades past their intended lifespans. The responsible path for ratepayers, taxpayers, natural river corridors, recreation, and the long-term safety of downstream communities is decommissioning and removal of the dams. I implore the Public Service Commission to heed the recommendations of the administrative law judge, the governor, and the Department of Natural Resources. Please stop this irresponsible dam sale. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bebo. Up next, we have James Ward and then Kimberly Bogan.
My name is
Ward?
James Ward. I represent the Hardy Pond Preservation Alliance. It's 650 members. And although I'm here advocating for Hardy Pond today, as Hardy goes the rest of the dams. So I guess whether they like it or not, I'm here advocating for 13 communities. I want to start by talking about the Michigan Hydro Relicensing Coalition. What a ridiculous name for that group. Proud Unlimited, Great Lakes Fly Fishers, Anglers of the Ausable, Michigan Steelhead and Salmon Association. Is anybody picking up on a theme here? For them to be advocating for licensing or not like relicensing is ridiculous. Talking about conservationists who I'm sure think they're doing what's best for the communities that are involved. Unfortunately, the communities that they're talking about strongly disagree. The end of the day, talking about returning the rivers to their original splendor. For the people that live on these ponds, we know different. The 12 swans that live outside the islands by our docks would disagree. Minks and turtles and ducks and bald eagles that are around the reservoir, the sunsets that are on the pond. I got to watch the northern lights over the pond. This place is just beautiful. So at the end of the day, what are these groups advocating for? Frankly, it's men that want to stand with their fly rod in the stream and their rubber pants, and removing the dams would allow them to do that a little more. Those of us that already live in these communities find that disrespectful, that a hobby would affect the lives of the people around these reservoirs. Edenville happened, and groups smelled blood in the water. Private equity means we're squeezing profits out of it, means maintenance doesn't go into the equation. That is a slap in the face to the companies that we're talking about that are involved with these sales. You have 97 years of safety maintenance that's happened with consumers. Confluence has a perfect safety record for the dams that they've owned and yes, sold. 47 dams that they bought, 45 of them that they've sold. FERC and the inspection that they've done on all of these dams have come back perfect. They're hydrological, geotechnical, structural engineers that come over from Chicago annually and inspect these dams have said that the infrastructure here is sound and working as it was meant and engineered to do. We had record flooding, just talked about, and it was all over the news. The dams are almost failing. Well, by definition, that means the dams didn't fail. By definition, that means that they acted as they were engineered and in purpose to function. So what are we talking about with safety? We're talking about a perfect safety record for two companies based on another company's safety record and failings of inspections that happened with them for years. Somebody should have stepped in and made them lower the water years before that dam failed. That doesn't need to happen at Hardy. Hardy already lowers the water every season. Hardy was not in any jeopardy when we had these record floods this year because the dam was lowered. The waters were lowered. They are taking their responsibilities seriously. As pertains to the buyback agreement, I see this as a way to hold consumers responsible for the infrastructure that they put in place. Called a loan. Rates can't be increased and passed on unless this commission allows that to happen. So hold consumers responsible, don't allow the rates to go up. And that turns into a 30-year loan that they've got for maintenance. I would argue that the maintenance fund, the safety fund that has been talked about being too little too late by the governor. I would argue instead that it sounds pretty good, $9 million a year for 30 years on companies that have already shown that they've got a perfect safety record. Trust the engineers and the inspectors that come from FERC. Mr. Scripps, I wish I had 15 minutes to talk to you about your time on the Dam Safety Task Force and what your findings were. I'm sure you found things that were inadequate, but I would love to know what your findings were on the dams that we're talking about here today. The communities around these reservoirs are dependent on the reservoirs, businesses. It's not just recreations. I keep hearing about, well, it's just people worried about their property values. I'm going to die in this house. I don't care what the place is worth. I just know I love my life there. I know there are tens of thousands of people around the ponds in these 13 communities that feel the same way. That needs to be respected. Look at the facts of safety when we're talking about what the dams, don't be speculative on what the dams will or won't do. Look at the facts that have been laid out by FERC for us. Think of the communities that are involved, use the facts that are before you, and I don't know, try to change the mind of the governor who's already asked you to deny the sale. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Up next, we have Kimberly Bogan and then Rick Chapla.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kimberly Bogan. I am a registered nurse here in Michigan and a resident of Holt. I am not here to talk about dams and ponds today, but it does go to show you that there are so many different issues to stand up and be passionate advocates about. So I appreciate that. Today is a significant day because DTE, Consumers Energy, and Indiana Michigan Power are due to submit their reports on the response to the July 3rd storms. And we heard back in July meeting from many of the people that were affected, as well as the leadership in those areas. And I appreciate the commission is requiring those reports. More than 1,500 customers contacted the commission about these outages, and hundreds of thousands of Michiganders lost power. But what I'm interested in today is what happens next. What these reports are going to tell us about what happened. But will they also tell us about what is going to change? I would like to know what measurable standards the commission will use to evaluate these reports. For example, were staffing levels adequate? Were restoration estimates accurate? And was the communication with customers adequate? And if the answer to any of these questions is no, what are the consequences? Because customers are continuously being asked to pay for more infrastructure and reliability. And I heard you say earlier on another matter about setting a higher bar. And I believe that we need to considerably raise the bar on accountability as well. The commission has now taken the important step of considering ways to tie utility earnings and penalties directly to the customer outcomes. I think the July storm response is exactly the kind of event where that accountability should matter. I also appreciate that the commission has recently made a reliability data available at the zip code level. I've been going in and trying to play around with that, getting used to that. And I look forward to having more tools like this that are available that I can educate my fellow citizens on how to use to keep them better informed. I believe this is a tremendous step towards transparency, but I would like to see that same transparency applied to accountability. I want Michiganders to be able to see what did we pay, what did the utility promise, and what did they actually deliver? And when it didn't deliver, what happened? Because reliability isn't an abstract number when you're sitting in a house without power during extreme heat with small children and many pets. It's whether your refrigerator is working to keep your food safe and your medications reliable. It's whether you can keep your home safe. It's whether someone who depends on electricity for medical equipment can remain safely at their home and are not being told to go to their local emergency room to see me. And ultimately, it's whether the billions of dollars customers are paying for grid investment are actually producing the reliable services that were promised. So my question today is simple. When these storm reports are reviewed, what specific measurable changes and consequences should customers expect to see if the utilities fail to meet these standards? And will the public be able to see the commission's evaluations of these storm reports, including corrective actions that are ordered and whether those actions are actually completed? Because I don't think at this time Michiganders need another report simply telling us what went wrong. We need to know what is going to be different the next time that storm comes. Thank you for your time today.
Spoken. Rick Chapla and then Valerie Brader.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposed Consumers Energy dams sale. My name is Rick Chapla. I'm a citizen of West Michigan in Ottawa County specifically. I worked previously for the Right Place, a regional economic development organization to advance the economy of West Michigan. Hydro dams, like the Croton and Hardy structures on the Muskegon River, and at least 11 others, are an obsolete and inefficient form of electric energy generation, just as are the coal-burning energy production plants like the Port Sheldon facility in Ottawa County. I urge you to reject the proposed sale of these dams by Consumers Energy. I further urge you to prompt the initiation of detailed economic analysis if these and other dams are removed. An example could be, in part, that which was prepared by the Anderson Economic Group for the Grand Rapids Whitewater project. This project involves the removal of dam structures in the Grand River as it runs through downtown Grand Rapids. The expected economic benefits that will result from the Whitewater project include new boating facilities and users, new kayakers, persons who fish, and visitors and tourists to downtown Grand Rapids. This project means new patrons of downtown lodging facilities, restaurants, and bars, more people watching activities along the banks of the downtown Grand River. The projected benefits are millions. Perhaps the state of Michigan, and especially the DNR, could be a partner in these economic impact analysis, given that we taxpayers also own a couple of hundred dams across the state. It would be my hope that Consumers Energy would partner and contribute financially to the preparation of economic impact analysis. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you for your service and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Chapla. And Valerie Brader.
Thank you. As I said, my name is Valerie Brader and I represent the Ann Arbor Sustainable Energy Utility. I just wanted to give a short update on the status of the SEU, the city's publicly owned 100% renewable, voluntary, and supplemental utility. As you may remember, the SEU began its service in the city's Bryant neighborhood, which has some of the city's most affordable housing. We've been thrilled by the strong interest of customers in choosing to take service through their rooftop solar and battery units that can provide resilience during outages. We have many dozens of systems installed and being installed, and based on our response, plan to close our Bryant pilot to those who sign up through September. As those systems are installed, we're also working to bring our selected billing system online. We will then look at installing systems in other parts of the city where we have a list of more than 1,000 customers expressing interest, in addition to several potential customers with larger multi-tenant buildings that are in early discussions with the city about taking service. We were able to secure tax credit eligible panels earlier this summer to help meet that demand cost effectively. This points to one of the exciting parts of the SEU, which is that we believe it's successfully addressing the split incentive problem between tenants who are responsible for utility bills and building owners that have to approve any installations on the property. We're seeing a very high proportion of renters and landlords in the Bryant neighborhood, and we expect that to continue given the interest that we're seeing from both landlords and tenants. This has led us to discover several parts of the interconnection process that were written without expecting a lot of renters to be taking advantage of rooftop solar and batteries. This includes how you deal with it when tenants change, which happens not infrequently in Ann Arbor and often during the summer, which is the construction season for these as well. DT and the city have been coordinating regularly, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to identify ways to work within or even potentially to propose to adapt the currently approved regulations or procedures to take into account a large number of customers who are only paying their utility bill for a short period of time while the infrastructure remains the same. So thank you for allowing me to give this update today, and thanks to all of those, including DTE, that have been working with the city to make this happen for some of our most economically challenged residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brader. Those are all the cards that I have today. I'll see if there's anybody else attending in person who would like to make public comment before we move to the virtual options. Okay, we have 10 names at this point, and we'll start with Carol Derringer and then Nate Winkler.
Okay, thank you. My name is Carol Doringer, and my comment also concerns Consumers Energy's dam sale. My husband and I live on Lake Allegan, and I am with the Lake Allegan Association. Dam removal would trigger significant home sales around our lake. My husband and I are year-round residents, but 50% of Lake Allegan properties are second homes. Why would their owners keep a lakeside vacation home that becomes a swamp? Most would sell, and their fire sale prices would drag my home's market value down with it. I have a financial background. If Consumers Energy removes our dam, the appraisal literature I researched suggests we would suffer a 30 to 40% property value loss. I am in my 70s, so there's no hope of recovering such a loss in my lifetime. Also, almost every lakeside owner has invested in infrastructure like docks, retaining walls, and expensive stairs to reach the water. Ours is 90 steps. Who will pay to remove what will become useless eyesores if the dam is removed? I fear it will be me, a cash out-of-pocket insult to the financial injury imposed on me when the Lake Allegan home market crashes on the news of dam removal. Dam removal would also harm the Allegan community. Business owners tell me that traffic and sales light up when summer brings the out-of-town owners back to Lake Allegan. Their loss will be devastating. Also, a hydrogeologist that the association hired has predicted that dam removal would put 94 wells, and it's more than a prediction, he analyzed well records throughout the county, would put 94 wells at high risk of going dry or losing so much volume as to become inoperable. who would pay to drill new wells. And now there's a conservation issue. 4 of the dams, including ours, the Culkin Bridge Dam, are designated as critical barriers to a resurgence of invasive sea lamprey. That's a species that in the past decimated commercial and recreational fishing in the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission says that if these dams are removed, spawning lamprey will gain access to nearly 9,000 additional stream miles. They also say that there's no effective equivalent to the dams as barriers. So as you deliberate, I ask you, please remember the people whose lives are most tied to the fate of the 13 dams. Commissioners, I ask you to consider the daunting domino effects of dam removal as you make your decision. I do agree that some safeguard conditions are necessary, but as you consider those conditions, I ask you to enable a sale that also safeguards the people and communities your decision impacts the most. Please do not abandon the 13 dam communities. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doringer. Nate Winkler, and then Elizabeth Riggs.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to talk to you about the Consumers Energy proposed sale to Confluence Hydro and Hall Street Energy. I am Nate Winkler, and I live in Traverse City, Michigan. I've lived here all my life, and I speak to you today as a private citizen, a fisheries biologist over the course of my career, an angler, a hunter, and an avid paddler. And I also speak on behalf of the river because rivers don't often speak in a language understood by utilities or private equity firms. I also meant to give these comments in person, but I had to attend a pre-construction meeting to remove 2 deadbeat dams at taxpayer expense here in Grand Traverse County today. So unfortunately, I'm not down there. I've also worked pretty intimately on the 3-dam Boardman River Dam removal project, all of which were removed at taxpayer expense. Michigan taxpayers and taxpayers across the United States. So, and as a 20-time AuSable River Canoe Marathon competitor and finisher, I'm very familiar with the dams on the AuSable River, and I know firsthand what a good partner consumers can be in that respect, but I see in this case, Consumers is not being a good partner to the people of the state of Michigan by abdicating their responsibility to remove the dams if they're done using them and selling them to a private equity outfit. Rivers are a public trust resource in the state of Michigan. They're held in the public trust by the state for the people of Michigan. Rivers like the AuSable and the Manistee and the Muskegon are globally rare resources because they provide perennial cold water, and if you look, they are not found anywhere else on the planet. And my take is if Consumers is done with the dams they have on our rivers, they should take steps to deindustrialize our rivers and return them to a free-flowing state for the benefit of the people of the state of Michigan. There are over 10,000 natural lakes in the state of Michigan. So while my heart goes out to folks that would lose waterfront on impoundments, we only have a very few cold water rivers, and we have many warm and cool water lakes in the state. So again, I stand in opposition to consumers' proposed sale of their hydro facilities to Confluence Hydro and Hall Street Energy. And as a biologist, as a paddler, as an angler, firmly believe that the right decision would be to remove the dams if they are no longer viable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winkler. Up next, we have Elizabeth Riggs and then Mike Kriatovich.
Good afternoon.
Elizabeth, yes,
Can you hear me?
we can, yes.
Excellent. Chairman Scripps, Commissioners, my name is Elizabeth Riggs. I am the Great Lakes Regional Director for American Rivers and a Michigan resident. American Rivers is a national conservation organization that protects and restores rivers, advances public safety and community resiliency, and ensures responsible management of aging water infrastructure. American Rivers has worked on hydropower reform and dam removal nationwide for decades, including FERC relicensing, surrender, and decommissioning. And from that deep expertise, I'll emphasize 3 important lessons relevant to this specific rate case. Number 1, ownership of high hazard dams must be a full life cycle commitment, not simply an investment in a hydropower asset. 12 of the 13 dams currently owned by Consumers Energy are high hazard, and the dams are more than a century old on average. The important question is not whether a buyer can operate these dams today, but whether the ownership structure provides long-term assurance and capacity to maintain them, make major safety investments, complete relicensings, and ultimately decommission them in the future when continued operation no longer makes sense. Hall Street has divested 46 of the 47 hydropower dams they previously owned, generally after relatively short periods of ownership. Have they demonstrated ability and interest in stewarding century-old high-hazard dams for decades? Number 2, Michigan's experience shows why FERC regulation cannot substitute for a financially capable, committed long-term dam owner. FERC's dam safety enforcement tools cannot compel major safety investments from an owner that is unwilling or financially unable to make them. At Edenville, years of resolved safety deficiencies resulted in FERC revoking their hydropower license in 2018 and transferring that dam safety jurisdiction to the state of Michigan. The dam failed less than 2 years later, taking the Sanford Dam with it. And more recently at the O'Train Dam, required safety improvements remained unresolved for years. The owner entered bankruptcy, and FERC terminated their license last December, again, transferring jurisdiction of an unsafe aging dam to the state of Michigan. We cannot continue this pathway by which decades of insufficient safety compliance suddenly become the state's problem. And number 3, decommissioning and removal of some of these dams should be more seriously considered as the approach most within the public interest for marginally productive hydropower dams. Removal is a trade-off, not simply a loss. Case after case has shown that dam removals eliminate long-term liabilities, improve fisheries, restore rivers, and improve water quality. The Boardman Dam, the 3 dam removals on the river, provides one of many great examples where removal of the dams restored habitat and fish connectivity while creating new recreational and economic opportunities. American Rivers urges the Commission not to approve this transaction unless it can be confident that the ownership structure provides long-term assurance of responsibility for safety, maintenance, relicensing, and eventual decommissioning, and that it protects Michigan communities and ratepayers if circumstances change or the dams are transferred again. The Commission should also give stronger consideration to decommissioning and removal for dams that do not produce power cost effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riggs. Up next, we have Mike Kretovich and then Jake Veith.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for the service to the people of the state of Michigan. My name is Mike Kretovich. I am the supervisor of Valley Township in Allegan County. I strongly urge you to listen to our neighbors and communities to approve the sale of these dams from consumers to Confluence. My community depends on the economic impact of the recreational opportunities, the higher property values. Lake Allegan is the only lake we have in Valley Township with access to the public. And recreation is not its only benefit. It's also a major wildlife attractant. Migratory birds use it as a stopover on their journey south. Many ducks, geese, mergansers winter here as well. Aside from the wildlife and recreational benefits, the dams also act as a barrier against invasive species such as the sea lamprey and the round gobies. Additionally, it does slow the downstream invasion of aquatic species as the Eurasian milfoil, purple loosestrife, phragmites. They're slowed by the dam's action. The removal of the dam would also have a severe impact on the glacial drift aquifers that Lake Allegan covers a fair amount of, 1,600 acres of it, roughly 80 million tons of hydrostatic pressure. This aquifer serves not only the west side of Allegan County, it serves part of Ottawa County and northern Kalamazoo County. Lastly, it is a clean energy producer. It does also preserve a vital water source. As we watch water scarcity issues out west develop, I think it's important that we retain as much water in our area as we possibly can. I personally have met with both the teams from Consumers and Confluence. I believe their intentions are true. I know private equity firms can kind of go after the profit, but my hopes are that they are being straightforward with their promises. Once again, I strongly urge you to approve the sale of these dams to preserve the way of life that all of us around here enjoy. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Kretovich. Jake Veith and then Andy Fias.
Thank you, Commission. Can everybody hear me?
We can, yes.
All right. I just want to thank you all for allowing us the time to speak and for listening to our thoughts and concerns as community members and leaders. My name is Jake Veith. I'm the superintendent of schools at Bear Lake, as well as Caleb and Norman Dixon, and both lie in rural Manistee County. K&D, Caleb and Norman Dixon schools consist of approximately 350 square miles, including Tippy Dam within its district. Last month, I, along with many others, spoke about the financial and ecological impact these dams have on our communities. I spent most of my time talking about the economic impact, or rather the economic disaster it could create for residents of Manistee and Wexford County if the sale to Confluence Hydro is not approved and Consumers Energy instead removes the dams. Again, Manistee County, I talked about this last month, Manistee County brings in $20 million to their local economy, which is huge, seeing how we only have 25,000 residents. And we have over 80,000 visitors to Tippy Dam, which lie in Brethren and Wellston right here in Manistee County. If the sale's not approved, Consumers said the dams will be removed. And so where does that $20 million for our local economy go? You know, it would be very, very difficult. But today I want to speak more on a personal note, as well as the ecological impact of the removal. So personally, you know, Tippy Dam is why I, along with many others, originally moved to Manistee County. I grew up in Lansing area, Langsburg. I spent most of my weekends at Tippy Dam fishing for salmon and steelhead. My wife and I joked that she was basically a fishing widow on the weekends. So when we had the opportunity to move here, we jumped on it. I probably spend 50 days a year, or 50 days, a year below the dam, you know, going after salmon and steelhead. And then also spend a number of summer days above the dam on the sandbars, you know, pulling kids on tubes and skis, fishing for bass, walleye, pike, catfish, like many other folks. So, and when I fish below Tippy for salmon and steelhead, I always talk to people and ask them where they're from. And, you know, you hear from all over the state, but you also hear places like New York and Arizona, Oregon, Colorado, just so many places. And they are there for one reason, and that is to fish Tippy Dam. And that's part of that $20 million local economy. So if the sale doesn't go through, you know, the 80,000 visitors, they're not coming to Brethren or Caliber or Wellston or Irons. That nobody will even know where that is. What that means is our restaurants, our cabins, our bait shops, our grocery stores, our convenience stores, they're empty. And if they're empty, these local businesses are shutting down or laying folks off. And if they're laying folks off, they're moving away. And if they move away, I no longer have children in my rural schools. You know, it will be devastating. And I want to end with this. This is more ecological. So invasive species control. You know, if you do a quick Google search, you'll find that Tippy Dam and Hodenpyle dams are preventing sea lampreys and other invasives from being able to enter over 1,300 miles of creeks and rivers. And as someone just said earlier, all 13 dams are protecting over 9,000 miles. So I'm not an expert on invasive species, but the Great Lakes Fishery Commission are the experts. These are some quotes from a December 28th, 2022 letter directly from the Great Lakes Fishing Commission to Consumers Energy. So I quote, "Because the extent of the habitat the dams exclude from sea lamprey infestation and the need for lampricide treatment, dams on the Muskegon, Manistee, Asabo, Kalamazoo, and Grand Rivers are especially vital to continued success in controlling sea lamprey for the benefit of the Great Lakes fishery and associated recreation and tourism, which brings in estimated $7 billion with a B annual to the economy. So $7 billion industry. The Great Lakes Fishery Council goes on to say that 4 of the dams under review, Croton, Foote, Tippy, and Calkins, currently serve as sea lamprey barriers and are considered critical to the Commission's ability to control sea lamprey. And I end with one more quote. "The Manistee River is Lake Michigan's second largest producer of sea lampreys, and Tippy Dam serves as a critical sea lamprey barrier. Continued blockage of sea lamprey at Tippy is necessary for the continued logistical and financial ability of the Commission to successfully control lampreys in Lake Michigan." So again, I thank the Commission for allowing us time to speak and for listening. I, along with many individuals in the area where the dams lie, ask you to prevent the removal of the dams by approving the sale to Confluence Hydro. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veith. Andy Fias and then Alec Chesley.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Andy Fias, Croton Township trustee. I'm also a guy that loves to put on my rubber boots and get below the dam and fish that awesome fishery. I spoke to you back in July about our economic impact in Croton if the dam sale's denied and the dams are renewed. I want to talk to you today about some additional economic impact, and that's our campground. I'm going to flip this camera around. I was going to drive to Lansing, but I thought I'd bring Croton Township Campground to you. This is our campground, 150 spots, and it's regularly maxed out capacity-wise. We have people from all over the world, believe it or not, that have camped in this campground. And if you look over there, that's the reason this campground exists, Croton Pond. If the dams were to be removed, that water would recede quite a ways back from what we're seeing. The economic impact of this is about $600,000 in revenue for Croton Township due to this campground. We employ 10 people here. That would all probably change. And then the other thing I wanted to comment on is there's over 40 campgrounds that are on or near the 13 ponds created by these dams. So you can take some of that dollars and multiply it by 40, and it's going to be an astronomical economic impact for all these communities. We urge you to approve the sale. And I want to talk about one more thing before I hand it off. I've got the supervisor, Morgan Heinzman, with me today. And your panel has the perfect opportunity to allow this to happen, with many of these dams having an 8-year window left on their licensing. You could deny licensing renewal at that time if this thing isn't like we're being told it's going to be, in a great transition to Confluence Energy. With that, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you, and I again urge you to approve the sale of these dams. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fias. Alec Chesley, and then Mark Bennett. Alec Chesley, if you're on, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hey, good afternoon. I'm Alec Chesley. I live on Croton Pond, about a mile above Croton Dam. And I want to thank you for my chance to speak today. I'm here to urge the Public Service Commission to approve the sale of 13 dams to Confluence Hydro. I am particularly concerned about the Croton Hardy dams because I've lived here my entire life and I've worked here also. People come here to boat, fish, swim, camp, and just enjoy the water. Those visitors support our campgrounds, our marinas, our stores, our restaurants, and many local businesses. Myself and my children have all learned to water ski here on these backwaters. We spent countless hours jet skiing, boating, just having fun as a family. If these dams were removed, the reservoirs were drained, the impact would be devastating. The campgrounds and marinas could close. Businesses like the ones I've previously owned would struggle to survive. The property values would suffer, and our entire community would be permanently changed. These reservoirs are not just bodies of water. They're a major part of the economy here and our way of life. The dams provide clean, renewable energy right here in Michigan. And I believe the sale to Confluence Hydro is the best opportunity to preserve these dams and protect our access, and ultimately save the communities that depend on them. I've spent 56 years seeing what tourism means to this area, and I can tell you that we cannot afford to lose our reservoirs. I am respectfully asking the Service Commission to approve this sale and help protect the Croton Hardy Dam community for our future generations. I thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mr. Chesley. Mark Bennett, and then David Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. And again, thanks to the commission for allowing us to speak. I'm speaking in support of the sale of the dams from Consumers Energy to Confluence. My wife and I and family are property owners in Mecosta Township, just a little bit north of the Rogers Dam. And we've been property owners there for 21 years. We recently, about 4 years ago, built a new home on an adjacent property also on the river. And that is our forever home. And we've enjoyed memories of our children and now grandchildren, virtually growing up on the river and enjoying all the amenities of that. And I could tell you a bunch of stories on that, and they may be heartwarming, but that's not really why I chose to speak today. What I'm most concerned about is what you've already heard from many folks, is the economic impact that the removal of dams would have on the communities affected. So we've grown to love the community. As I said, we've been there for a number of years. The economic impact to the people, the hardworking people of those communities and the businesses that thrive throughout the course of folks recreating and living around these areas, the removal of those dams would be absolutely devastating. Now, personally, my wife and I are just about at the retirement age, and it wouldn't necessarily devastate us. But again, the hardworking men and women and families around that area, I don't think would be able to recover. Business owners and property owners would suffer irreparable damage. Now, full disclosure, this is still technically our second home. We still maintain a home west of Grand Rapids. I happen to be the township supervisor of Talmadge Charter Township, and I know firsthand what such a devastating economic loss could mean to the community in many realms, the public safety realm, the infrastructure realm, and I just think that the sale of these dams to a private equity firm such as Confluence, who I've done a fair amount of research on, appears to be a reputable company who could take control of these dams and allow the communities that are around these structures to thrive for many years to come. So again, I strongly support the sale of these dams, and I would ask the commission to strongly consider that, approving that sale as well. And thank you very much for your time, and thank you for what you do for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Up next, we have David Reese, and then finally Joe Porterfield. Mr. Reese, we'd love to hear from you. Okay, we'll move to Joe Porterfield. We'll come back to David Reese. Mr. Porterfield, we can see you but can't hear you yet.
Okay, maybe that's it. Oh, there I am.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I think we have you both on. I'm going to go with Mr. Porterfield first, and then David Reese will come right back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. I am Joe Porterfield. I'm the Wexford County Administrator. Last week, I spoke to you on behalf of, our citizens in the meetings that we had regarding these sales. This week, this month, I wanted to reach out to you. I was asked by one of our residents to read a letter on her behalf because she was not going to be able to be at your meeting today. So if I could read that letter, this letter came from a resident in the west part of our county. Her name is Karen Melchek. Her letter says, "Thank you, commissioners, for taking the time to continue to seek input on this very important decision. I am a local resident of Mesick area and have been since 1976. I have lived on the Hodenpyle Dam since that time. I have watched multiple families enjoy this unique recreational resource, both above and below the dam. And I have a few main points I'd like to highlight today. My first concern centers on the initial surveys completed that overwhelmingly showed that the public wanted to keep these dams. This key component of information has not been discussed recently, and it seems like it may be getting ignored over the past few months. Please remember, the public wants you to make your decision. Secondly, I continue to be puzzled by why we would eliminate such a clean energy source as hydro. We're subsidizing other clean energy sources such as solar and wind. Why not assure the clean hydro energy options continue, just making sure maintenance is in compliance and they are being maintained safely? Another critical consideration is the economic assurance to the communities that were built around these reservoirs and these dams. and rely on that revenue to survive today. In our area, that means approximately $13.8 million. That's substantial, and I urge you to continue to keep this in mind and at the top of your thought process as you deliberate. The fourth thing I'd like to talk about involves the sale of the dams. Is this conversation has been going on for almost 3 years. Many opportunities have been made for input while setting the standards for the sale and negotiations. Safety is a top concern for all of us. I'm in favor of the sale of these dams. We have an inspection system in place to ensure that they are properly maintained and safe. We need to make sure that that continues, uphold those standards, and implement intervention if those standards are not met. Thank you for your consideration. Again, Commissioners, that's from one of the residents in Wexford County.
Thank you, Mr. Porterfield, for sharing those thoughts from Ms. Melchick. David Reese, we'll let you have the last word here today.
Okay, well, it's actually Karen, and we have several of our neighbors here on the Croton Pond that live on Croton Hardy Drive are here. We sort of put a letter together, so I'd like to read that to you instead of all of us trying to make a comment. Good afternoon, and thank you for giving the opportunity to express our concerns regarding the sale of the dams between Consumers Energy and Confluence Hydro. We are neighbors on Croton Hardy Drive on the Croton Pond and would like to express our desire that you approve this sale or get it modified to cover your concerns. If you do not move forward and get this contract signed, consumers may decide to remove the dams. The economic ramifications and natural devastation would be huge. First of all, the property values would have to be adjusted down, and this changes how much money would be removed from all the programs that use property taxes to fund schools, fire department, public safety, etc. Second, what the ripple down effect would be for local governments, business, all the state campgrounds and marinas on these backwaters of the dam. The sobering effect on the thousands of people living on and around these dams would be horrific. Many families have their lives built on these backwaters for over 100 years. They would lose huge values on their homes, and businesses would lose revenue and may have to close their doors, and the many years it will need to heal the land if the dams are removed. If you feel the contract does not cover your concerns, then work with these companies and get it right for all of us, because removing the dams is not an option for the people. We know that groups like Trouts Unlimited and a few others, none of these people live on these ponds, and it does not affect their lives if the dams are removed. However, they do not have a pound of flesh of this, or a few fish worth all the pain and heartache for thousands of people involved that do live on these waters and should have a say in this. It is our lives, our livelihood, and the people on these waters who should matter. Thank you for your time. We pray for a solution that will protect all. Have a blessed afternoon.
Thank you very much. You as well. And thank you for getting your neighbors together. Okay, that concludes the public comment period of the meeting. Please note that the public may continue to submit comments to the commissioners via email at lara-mpsc-commissioners@michigan.gov. And again, that email address is included in the meeting notice for today's meeting. Just a couple of quick announcements. First, earlier this week, the Commission launched a new affordability webpage that outlines actions the Commission has taken in recent years to control energy costs, as well as expanding energy assistance programs for those most in need. There's a host of information on that. I encourage those who are interested to review that. Also, Michiganders struggling with home energy costs can find information through that website or directly at michigan.gov/mpsc/gethelp about financial assistance and other resources that are available. This was part of a broader effort around controlling energy costs and Earlier this month as well, we released a letter that responded to the governor's call for us to investigate legislative opportunities to promote affordability and grid reliability, as well as options for new and improved energy assistance programs. Our recommendations, which fall into 3 broad categories but contain nearly 24 separate and specific recommendations, are available also on our website as well as the full text of that letter. Just to highlight maybe 3, because they also play into issues that were discussed earlier in the meeting. One is around competitive procurement and the opportunity to increase competition within the current regulatory structure in Michigan. Commissioner Paratek spoke to efforts that are ongoing at the commission, as well as and the letter also includes legislative recommendations. Second is the use of securitization that allows utilities to recover the remaining book balance on retired assets while also using a lower cost of financing. The case that was approved earlier today is just an annual regular true-up, but the securitization in that particular instance is projected to save customers $126 million over the traditional financing that would otherwise have been used. And third is the codification of some of the strongest customer protections in the nation relating to data center tariffs, and that relates to an issue that we also took up earlier today. So those recommendations, as well as a host of others, are included in that. And third, and also related, we want to make sure that the public has an opportunity to learn more about the affordability of energy services, as well as to have your say. And so want to highlight that we will be holding a public hearing and workshop in Detroit on September 3rd to discuss energy affordability as we work to reduce the number of households with unsustainable energy burdens. That event, again, set Thursday, September 3rd, 6 to 8:30 p.m. at the Durfee Innovation Society on the city's near west side. And more information about that is available on our website. I also want to say a particular thank you to those who took part in a similar hearing and workshop in Grand Rapids on August 11th, as well as to those who attended a hearing on August 12th at West Shore Community College between Manistee and Ludington on transmission issues, and particularly thanks to the MISO representatives who attended and provided an overview of MISO's long-range planning process. And with that, I think those are my announcements. Are there any other announcements?
I want to give a quick announcement. Yesterday, our chair Scripps celebrated a milestone birthday. So we just want to publicly wish him a happy birthday and thank you for your leadership, Chair.
Thank you.
Should we sing?
Yes, I think you in particular should say.
Happy birthday, Chair.
We will save your ears from us singing. He already went through it.
Well, I will second that emotion. Thank you, Commissioner. With that, we'll conclude today's meeting. The next regular commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 10, 2026 at 1:00 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn today's meeting.
I second motion.
We will now have a vote on the motion to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries by a unanimous vote. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.